Picture it. A morning 74,000 years ago. A river. Cold water over smooth stones. A bank of gray mud. A line of green reeds. A heron standing on one leg. Somewhere behind you, a fire. A thin thread of smoke. The smell of last night's meat. And you, crouched at the water's edge, cupping a drink into your hands, watching your own face ripple on the surface. This is an ordinary day. The best kind of day. Warm sun. A blue sky. Birds. A child somewhere laughing. A father napping a stone blade. A mother scraping a hide. Grandmothers, uncles, cousins. A whole band, maybe 30 people, spread along the river doing the small, quiet work of staying alive. Nobody looks up. Why would they? The sky has always been the sky. But far to the east, past the coast, past the sea, on an island you will never see and have no word for, the ground is about to open. And when it does, it will not be a fire or a flood or a storm like any storm your people have survived before. It will be the largest explosion the human story has ever recorded. It will throw a mountain into the sky. It will turn the sun the color of blood, then the color of nothing at all. And for the next several years, the world you are drinking from this morning, the river, the reeds, the heron, the blue, will slowly, quietly begin to die. This is the day the sky went dark. This is the closest our entire species ever came to ending. And the fact that you are here, alive, reading these words, means that somewhere in that cold and dying world, a handful of people did something almost impossible. They survived it. So let me take you there. Let me show you what the end of the world actually looked like, and how a few thousand frightened, hungry, ordinary humans lived through it and became everyone. Became us. Became you. Let's start with the mountain. Today there's a lake on the island of Sumatra. A calm, beautiful lake. Blue water, green hills, an island sitting in the middle of it, like an eye. Tourists take boats across it. Fishermen drop nets into it. It looks like paradise. It looks like nothing ever happened here. But that lake is a wound. It is 100 kilometers long and 30 kilometers wide, and it is not a normal lake at all. It is a crater, a caldera. The scar left behind when the ground beneath Sumatra tore itself apart. That peaceful blue water is sitting inside the mouth of the deadliest volcano our species has ever lived through. Its name is Toba, and to understand what Toba did, you have to throw away every volcano you have ever seen. Forget the neat little cone. Forget the postcard. Forget the trickle of orange lava creeping down a hill. You have heard of Vesuvius, the volcano that buried the Roman city of Pompeii, that froze people in ash where they stood. Toba was 1,000 times bigger than that. You have heard of Krakatoa, the eruption in 1883 whose sound was heard almost 5,000 kilometers away, the loudest noise in recorded history. Toba was far larger than that. You may have heard of Tambora, the eruption that gave the world a year with no summer, that killed crops across Europe and America in 1816. Toba dwarfed even that. Here is the number. When Toba erupted, it threw out around 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and molten stone. 2,800. Krakatoa managed about 20. Mount St. Helens, the eruption Americans still talk about, managed 1. Toba was the biggest eruption anywhere on Earth in the last 2 million years. Nothing in human history comes close. Nothing. Now let's stand there when it happens. It does not begin with a bang. It begins with pressure. For weeks, maybe months, a vast chamber of molten rock deep under the island swells and pushes. The ground bulges. Small earthquakes ripple out. A tremor at breakfast, a tremor at night, cracks opening in the dirt, animals growing restless, birds leaving early. If there are people on that island, they feel the earth breathing under their feet, and they are afraid, and they have no idea that fear is the correct response. And then the roof gives way. The eruption tears open the crust in a ring many kilometers across. Superheated gas and shattered rock blast upward at the speed of a bullet. A column of ash punches straight through the sky. Up past the clouds, up past where birds can fly, up past where weather even happens, 40 kilometers into the stratosphere. From space, it would look like the planet had been shot. The sound is beyond anything a human ear was built to survive. A roar that rolls out across the ocean, across islands, across whole coastlines. A noise that people 1,000 kilometers away would have heard as the sky itself breaking. Then comes the worst part. The column is too heavy to hold itself up. It collapses, and when it falls, it does not fall as rain. It falls as pyroclastic flow, an avalanche of glowing gas and ash, hotter than an oven, moving faster than a car, hugging the ground, incinerating everything it touches. Forests, hills, coastline. Anything alive within range simply ceases to be. The island is erased. But the island is not the story. You are the story. You, back at your river, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away, on another continent entirely, who has no idea that anything has happened at all. Not yet. The first thing you might notice is the sound. A low, distant boom, days after the fact, rolling in from the wrong direction, from the empty sea. Thunder without a single cloud. The dogs. Well, the wolves you have not quite made into dogs yet. Go quiet. The birds go quiet. There is a wrongness in the air that no one can name. And then, on the eastern horizon, you see it. A wall. Not a cloud, not a storm. A wall, gray-brown and endless, climbing the sky, swallowing the stars as it comes. It moves for hours. It moves for days. And slowly, the light begins to change. The sun turns yellow, then orange, then a deep, sick red, a red no one in your band has ever seen the sun become. The blue drains out of the sky. Shadows go strange and long at the wrong times of day. And then, softly, almost gently, it begins to fall. Ash. Not hot, not here, not this far away. Cool gray ash drifting down like snow. Except your people have a word for snow, and they have no word for this. It settles on the reeds. It settles on the river, turning the water gray. It settles on the fire and smothers it. It settles in your hair, on your eyelashes, on the tongue of the child who looks up and opens her mouth to taste it. It coats the leaves. It coats the grass. It coats the backs of the deer and the shells of the snails and the wings of the beetles. In some places, that gray blanket will pile up ankle deep. In others, we still find it today. A pale layer of Toba's ash pressed into the ground across India, across the ocean floor. A fingerprint of the day the world changed. 15 centimeters thick in places. Thousands of kilometers from the mountain that made it. Think about what that means. The dust from a single afternoon, on one island, 74,000 years ago, is still lying in the ground beneath India today. A thin gray line a geologist can put a finger on and say, here. This is the day. We can measure its chemistry and match it, grain for grain, to the crater on Sumatra. We can count the layers of mud above it and below it. A whole planet's worst afternoon, pressed into a stripe of pale ash you could cover with 2 fingers. And the ash is only the messenger. The real killer is invisible, and it is already high above you, and it is not going away. When Toba erupted, it did not just throw out rock. It threw out gas, enormous clouds of sulphur, billions of tons of it, blasted straight into the stratosphere. Up there, above the weather, that sulphur turned into a fine haze of tiny droplets, a veil wrapped right around the planet. And that veil did one simple catastrophic thing. It reflected sunlight back into space. The sun did not go out, but it was dimmed. turned down like a lamp with a hand held over it for years. And when you take the warmth out of the sky, the whole world starts to fall apart in order. First, the temperature drops, not by a little. Across large parts of the planet, the air cools by several degrees. In some regions, models suggest, by as much as 10. That may not sound like much when you hear it. It is the difference between a forest and a frozen wasteland. It is the difference between a harvest and a famine. It is an ice age arriving not over centuries, but over a single season. Then the plants begin to fail. Green things need light and warmth, and both have been stolen. Leaves brown. Fruit does not come. The nuts do not ripen. The roots your grandmothers dig for turn thin and hard. Whole forests thin out into gray skeletons. And in a world where every calorie you eat comes from a plant or from an animal that ate a plant, the failure of the plants is the beginning of the failure of everything. Then the animals begin to die. The deer you hunt grow scrawny, then scarce, then gone. The herds move away or simply starve where they stand. The birds vanish. The fish thin out in the cold gray rivers. Predators, the big cats, the hyenas, the things that hunt in the dark, get desperate too. And a desperate predator is far more dangerous than a fed one. Suddenly the animals that mostly left you alone are looking at your children with new interest. And this does not last a week. This is the part the mind refuses to hold. The dim sky stays. One cold season bleeds into the next. The first year, the elders say it will pass, the way a storm passes. It does not pass. The second year, the stored food is gone, the fat is gone, the easy animals are gone. The third year, there are faces missing from the fire that were there when it began. The very old, the very young, the ones who were already sick. And children are born into a gray world and grow up never having seen a truly blue sky, never having tasted a ripe summer fruit, believing that this, the cold, the haze, the hunger, the red sun, is simply what the world is. And then it is your turn. This is the moment. This is where our whole species stood on the edge of a cliff. Because scattered across Africa and the edges of Asia, small bands of humans, people exactly like you, with your hands, your brain, your fear, your love for the people around your fire, began to starve and die and not be replaced. We can actually see it. Not in bones, not in ash. In you. In your own body right now. Here is one of the strangest facts in all of human biology. Take any two humans from anywhere on Earth. A person from Norway, a person from Nigeria, a person from Japan, a person from Peru, and compare their DNA. You will find that we are astonishingly, almost eerily similar to one another. Genetically, the entire human species is more alike than a single troop of chimpanzees living on one riverbank in Africa. 8 billion of us, and barely any variety at the deepest level. There is only one good way that happens. At some point in the past, our numbers crashed. Crashed hard. A species that spreads out and thrives for a long time collects a rich, messy, wildly varied set of genes. A species that gets squeezed down to a tiny, desperate handful, and then rebuilds from just those few survivors, carries the fingerprints of that squeeze forever. We are all descended from a small group, a bottleneck. And when scientists first read that signature in our genes, and then looked for something in the ancient past big enough to have caused it, they found a volcano. They found Toba. And they proposed something breathtaking and terrifying. Around 74,000 years ago, they suggested, the number of breeding humans on the entire planet may have fallen to just a few thousand. Some estimates said 10,000. Some said 3,000. A whole species, the ancestors of every king, every artist, every city, every person you have ever loved, reduced to a population you could fit into a single modern sports hall. We came that close, this close, to simply not being here. Now, I have to be honest with you, because the truth is more interesting than the legend. Not every scientist agrees that Toba did all of this, and the argument itself is a beautiful piece of detective work. When researchers dug in southern India at a place called Jwalapuram, they found stone tools buried beneath Toba's ash, and stone tools buried above it. The same kinds of tools. Which means whoever was living there making them did not simply vanish when the ash fell. Somebody kept going. Somebody survived, right there, close to the disaster, and carried on. And when other teams drilled deep into the mud at the bottom of Lake Malawi in Africa, reading tens of thousands of years of climate stored in the layers, they did not find the sudden, brutal, decades-long freeze the harshest version of the theory predicted. The cooling was there, but it was gentler and shorter than the nightmare. So the fiercest form of the story, that Toba alone almost wiped us out in a single stroke, is still argued over, still tested, still alive. But here is what almost nobody argues about. The bottleneck is real. At some point, our ancestors passed through the eye of a needle. Our numbers did fall to something frighteningly small, and Toba was, without question, the most violent thing the planet did anywhere near that time. Whether it was the whole cause or one blow among several, the human story has a chapter where the lights very nearly went out. So how did they do it? How does a soft, slow, hairless animal with no claws, no fangs, and no fur survive a winter that lasts for years on a planet that has turned against it? The answer is the reason you exist. And it is not strength. It is not speed. It is the 4 or 5 things our ancestors were quietly better at than anything else alive. The first is fire. By 74,000 years ago, humans had been masters of fire for a very long time. And in a world where the sky itself has stopped giving warmth, a band that can make its own sun is a band that can live where others freeze. Fire thawed frozen food. Fire kept the desperate predators back in the dark. Fire turned a cold cave into something a family could survive the night in. On the worst night of the coldest year, that small orange circle of light was the difference between a people and a memory. The second is the coast. While the inland forests browned and starved, the edge of the sea kept a quiet promise. Down in southern Africa, at places like Pinnacle Point, we find the traces of people who had learned to read the tides, who pried shellfish off the rocks, who gathered mussels and limpets, who ate from the ocean when the land had nothing left to give. The sea does not care about a dim sky the way a forest does. For the bands clinging to the coastline, low tide was a dinner table that never quite went empty. The third is the group. A lone human in a dying world is a dead human. But 30 humans, or 100, who share food, who share warmth, who share what they know, who remember where the water is, which routes are safe, how to find shelter in a storm. That is something an ice age struggles to kill. In the hardest years, the bands that hoarded and split apart died. The bands that pulled together, that fed the child and the elder and the sick, that carried their knowledge through the dark. Those bands walked out the other side. The fourth is the mind. Your ancestors did not just endure the disaster. They watched it. They remembered it. They told each other about it around the fire, turned it into story and warning and ritual, passed it down so the next generation would know what the red sun meant and what to do when the ash came. A memory that outlives the person who made it is a kind of survival machine. And our ancestors had the best one on Earth. Picture one of those nights. A cave mouth somewhere in the cold highlands. Outside, wind, drifting ash, a darkness with no stars in it. Inside, a fire. And around the fire, a ring of bodies pressed close for warmth. A hunter mending the point of a spear. An old woman turning a strip of dried meat over the coals. 2 children asleep under the same deer hide, a baby at its mother's chest. Nobody in this cave is strong, nobody is fast, nobody has claws or fangs, but they have fire. They have a basket of shellfish from the coast by the wall. They have each other. And they have every story their people have ever learned, alive in their heads. And that, against everything the sky has thrown at them, is enough to carry them to morning. And the morning after that, and the one after that. Fire, the coast, the group, the mind, not fangs, not muscle, not luck alone. The strange, soft advantages of a strange, soft animal. And they were exactly enough, because the sky did clear. It always does. The sulphur veil, thinned and scattered, finally let the light back through. It took years. But one ordinary morning, somewhere, a survivor woke to something they had almost forgotten. Warmth on the skin. A patch of real, honest blue overhead. The color coming back into the world. The gray lifting off the leaves. A green shoot in the black ground. A herd, thin but alive, moving on the far hills. The first ordinary day at the end of the longest winter our species has ever known. And the people who saw that blue, the frightened few who had held on through the dark with their fire and their shellfish and their crowded, stubborn, generous little bands, those people are not a side note in your story. They are the whole story. Every single human being alive today, all 8 billion of us, every language, every face, every nation, every child. We are all descended from the survivors of that dim and terrible age. You are the direct result of somebody, 74,000 years ago, refusing to let the fire go out. Which leaves one last question, and it is not a comfortable one. Toba is not the only monster of its kind. Under the calm green fields of Yellowstone, in the western United States, sits another one. A supervolcano that has erupted before and could, one distant day, erupt again. Under the bay near Naples, in Italy, another restless giant stirs and swells beneath a city of millions. These sleeping mountains do not run on human time. They wait for tens of thousands of years, quietly, patiently, and then they wake. We are cleverer than our ancestors were. We have satellites watching the ground breathe. We have science that can read the pressure building below. But we have also built a world of 8 billion people that leans every single day on warm skies and steady harvests, and the thin, forgiving margin of a stable climate. Our ancestors survived the day the sky went dark with fire and shellfish and each other. It is worth asking quietly what we would reach for. We like to tell ourselves we are safe now, that satellites and science and steel have lifted us out of the reach of the old catastrophes. And maybe they have. But the same sky that dimmed over your ancestors is the sky above your roof tonight. The same restless planet that built Toba is the ground beneath your city. The distance between us and them is not as wide as it feels. It is only time. And time, to a sleeping mountain, is nothing at all. 74,000 years ago, on an ordinary morning by an ordinary river, our species looked up and watched the sun turn red. And then it held on. In the cold, in the ash, in the dark, through years no one had a word for. It held on, and it is still holding on. In you,